So this is a section on mistakes, understanding them and avoiding them. And very interesting background, and you'll get to see some mistakes from some of the traders that have sent stuff in, and should be pretty interesting for those of you who haven't heard about Van's ideas about mistakes in trading. So we'll talk a little, we'll first define mistakes. We'll look at some global mistakes. These are mistakes that affect your whole trading business or a big portion of them. Individual mistakes are ones that affect pretty much, just an individual trade. We've got a few case studies, and then we'll finish up with a way about preventing mistakes. So, Dan Harrington is a professional poker player. He's been at the table for the World Series of Poker Championship two times, and then he won in 1997. Earned more than $6 million in winnings over his career, so definitely a gentleman who knows something about poker. Wrote a book, and in the book he said, in the very long run, your results at the poker table will approach 1, the sum of all your opponent's mistakes, less 2, the sum of your own mistakes. So, Van's into poker, as you may well know, or have read quite a bit, and that got him thinking about trading, and so Van said, well, in the very long run, your results will equal the actual expectancy of your system times the number of opportunities you have less one important consideration, and that is you must subtract some value, say 3R, for each mistake that you make. Okay? Does that make sense? If you're trading flawlessly and you have a system that generates an expectancy, you can get that expectancy. If you trade with mistakes, you have some number less than that, or possibly more, depending on the mistake, but you're making mistakes. You're not following the rules. So, a mistake occurs when you do not follow your rules. So if you don't have any rules, then basically everything you're doing is a mistake. So, and then repeating the same mistakes over and over again is self-sabotage. And we don't get into that subject much in this course, but at the other peak performance workshops we cover that and how to identify it and how to address it. But does anybody notice that they make the same mistake over and over again? Does anybody not notice it? I see some smiles out there. All right. So let's talk about how this applies to trading. So if you have a system that has a 0.8 R expectancy and it trades 100 times a year, how many R are you going to earn in a year, roughly? 80, right? Okay. So if you risk 1% of your equity on each trade, easy to consider that you might get about 80% gain, less the mistakes that you make. Okay? So 80 trades a year, 100 trades a year is about how many a month? About 8. So about two trades a week, right? Okay. So if you make 2 mistakes every month, so 1 mistake every other week, and they cost 3 R each, then you've got 72 R in mistakes. Very expensive. So 80 R for the expectancy of the system minus the 72 R, you've got an 8 R year at this point. Yes, Kim?
But if your system's got an expectancy of 0.8, I mean, it seems like the mistake has to be really large to make the multiple of the R lost due to the mistake like 4 times the expectancy.
No, we're saying, so you're making 2 mistakes a month, so you're making 24 mistakes in the year.
I understand that, but I'm just saying you're valuing each mistake at 3R.
Yes.
On a system that's got an expectancy of 0.8, i.e. the mistake totally and utterly and overwhelmingly swamps the R.
Yes.
Is that realistic?
Yes. We'll look at some examples of what kind of mistakes you can make.
0.7, right? On average, it's 0.7. Because it's 72 R that you give up over 100 trades.
Right. I'm just saying that if each trade's got an expectancy of 0.8, it seems like making a mistake to generate a 0.3 to generate a 3R loss seems disproportionate. Just off the top of my head.
Yeah, I see.
We'll go through.
It's not.
Some of the case studies will show.
Do it for yourself instead.
Yeah.
That's your mistake. Well, I can make it part of the thing and say, here's this one exception. Kim did really well.
So you turned a great year, an 80R year, into something of a disaster. So you can turn a fairly good trading system into a borderline system. And what happens if you go into a typical drawdown and you throw in the mistakes? You could wind up abandoning a perfectly good system thinking it's terrible, but if you don't understand about mistakes, then you're avoiding that as a topic and missing the case that you've got a good system, you're just making mistakes along with the drawdown. So if 100 trades a year, a similar number of trades we were talking about, make 5 to 10% of those, on those you make mistakes. It can destroy your returns. Make mistakes on 20% of those. It can decimate your equity. And then also keep in mind that mistakes have nothing to do with winning or losing. You can actually make money on a mistake. The point is that mistakes simply mean you're not following your rules. That's what's. Has anybody made a mistake and made money? Yeah, right. So it's not if you, oh, I made money on that, that's not a mistake. Yeah, no. If you didn't follow your rules, it's a mistake, whether you made money on it or not. Okay. So global mistakes, these are ones that affect your business or your entire business or a large portion of it. So not treating your investment or trading business as a business, treating it more like a hobby. Most businesses fail to plan, and then as a result, they don't stick around very long. A lot of small businesses go under because they have no plan. So if you're doing that in your trading, subtract 50R. So, and Van's calling this PFA numbers, pluck from air. They're not based on a whole lot of research, but based on his experience and some good estimates. So developing a system without having any objectives around which to develop it. Anybody heard this? I just want to make a lot of money. Yeah. Yeah? So if you have done that, you can think in terms of about subtracting 20R from your gains for the year. Okay. So once you understand objectives and how particular trading systems can meet those objectives, then you've got something to focus your strategy on, focus that system on, and have it deliver on those objectives as opposed to just this nice idea of making a lot of money. So not using a trading system to direct your trades. And you'll notice this, if you go online or you hear pitches or you see advertisements for trading systems, a lot of them, they're really not full-blown trading systems through Van's definition. They don't have 10 or 11 parts. They just basically have a setup and an entry. That's it. And so how many systems have you run across that are named after the system, after the setup or the entry? That's very common. So, but that's not a full-blown system. So if you don't have a full-blown system with all 10 parts to it, then, and you haven't figured out the expectancy under the different market types, then subtract 50R. So trading a system without understanding the position sizing is a separate part of your system, and that the purpose of position sizing is to help you meet your trading objectives, then you might have a trading system, but without the position sizing understanding, then you can subtract 30R. So we'll move to individual mistakes at this point. So these are the ones that affect your individual trades. So concentrating on the investment, stock, or trade selection rather than the potential reward to risk ratio for that trade. So stock picking, right? And thinking about which stock to buy as opposed to what am I risking here and what's the potential reward. So subtract 2R for each time you do that. So jumping on a trade because it seems exciting rather than using a well thought out plan. Oh, Apple's going up this last month, I'm getting in. Subtract 2R each time you do that. So taking a trade because you hear a recommendation without understanding the risk reward potential for a trade. Anybody ever heard something like that? Yes? Anybody watch Jim Cramer? He'll help. Subtract 2R each time you do that. Okay?
Watch Jim Cramer?
No, each time you watch Jim Cramer. Yeah. Watching Jim Cramer is not a mistake. Following his advice, maybe. I don't know.
Watching him and laughing is good.
All right. Needing to be right. Has anybody ever taken a profit too quickly because they wanted to get the money off the table or avoided taking a loss? Anybody not done that? Right? So subtract 2R each time you have done that. So not having a bailout point, not having your initial stop loss point set when you take a trade. So that if you don't have that set, you don't know what 1R is for a trade, right? If you don't know where you're going to get out and where you've hit your risk point, then you need to subtract 2R each time you do that. Okay. Risking way too much on any given position means you don't understand position sizing strategies, and you probably don't understand portfolio heat at that point as well. Subtract 8R each time you do that. A potentially much higher expensive mistake when you've got position sizing strategies involved and you're risking more than you want to or need to. All right. Having too many positions in a portfolio causing you not to pay enough attention to something critical. Does everybody have some idea of how many positions they can manage effectively for whatever time frame you've got? Has anybody ever pushed the limit on that? Yeah. Okay, so you get to the edge and you start missing things. So subtract 1R per month for each time you do that, unless this is planned. So on a day trading basis, I can effectively manage a couple of positions, and Ken's very famous for saying he can manage 4. But we get these guys up from a particular fund down the Virgin Islands, and they say they can effectively manage 2 screens worth of intraday positions. So they can't even see the whole list of positions that they've got open. But they said they can manage it effectively with the systems that they've got and the way they trade. So way more than I can imagine myself doing. But just know where your limit is. Okay? Not recognizing mistake because you blame something else for it. Your broker, data feed, disruption from something, it's not something you're being responsible for. Subtract 2R each time you do that. So having a large portfolio of correlated positions that suddenly all sync with the market. So when can this happen? When there's an outside market event that affects the entire market and you've got a lot of positions on, right? Subtract 10R when this happens, unless this is part of your planning. Unless you know that this is going to happen or has potential to happen and you've planned for it, and it's not your worst case scenario, it's just a scenario that you've planned for. Okay? Yes, Kim.
Well, I don't know, maybe I think something should be clear. I mean, like, for example, let's say you have a bunch of positions, but 9/11 happens, right? I mean, that's just one of those way out there Six Sigma risks. That's different than having 20 positions that are all like oil drillers, right?
Yes.
So
this could be on 2 levels: group risk, where you're in one sector too much, or at a market level. But if you've got the understanding that events like 9/11 happen, or assassinations happen, or wars break out, and you don't plan for that and manage your entire portfolio heat and your entire market exposure, then this is the mistake.
But I would say that's a portfolio heat mistake versus a correlation mistake.
Okay. Well, portfolio heat addresses correlation.
Well, not really, because if you have a bunch of non-correlated positions, like you've got oil drillers and consumer staples, and 9/11 happens, they all go down, but they're not correlated.
Well,
They are that day, though.
There are them.
correlated at what level?
Well, but no, because correlation means that you've actually got a past demonstration of a relationship between them, right? And if they're non-correlated, but something happens that, yeah, but then you can say that they're always correlated and everything's correlated, right? That's a non-falsifiable thesis.
When the market tends to go down, correlations tend to go to 0. Or
Yeah, go to
go to
1.
1. Yeah, go to 0. Yes.
So maybe the idea is that you need some short positions and long positions.
There are a couple of ways to address that.
Okay.
One of the main things is not to be overexposed in the market, overexposed to your definition. Okay, so this is for somebody who doesn't understand that and gets hurt very badly when a situation like that happens. Okay. Trading 2 or more systems in the same brokerage account can get you into trouble because you don't know which system and which rules you're following and what kind of exits you're supposed to have on open positions. So subtract 1/2 R for each trade in the least used system where you're doing that. Okay? Optimally, you want each system separated in a different account so there's no question about what you're doing with that position in that account. Keeps it very clean. Not doing the top tasks of trading, especially those designed to correct and prevent mistakes, which we'll touch on here a little bit later. Subtract a half R for each week that you don't do the top tasks of trading. So we've got a number of case studies, people who have kept track of their errors, their mistakes, and sent those in. Having done this, I can tell you, and then talking to some other traders who have done this as well, this can be one of the most challenging things you've ever done in trading. It can also be one of the most humbling things, because once you start tracking them, you start noticing how many mistakes you're making, but then that awareness grows, and then you start becoming more able to prevent them. But it's very, very difficult to start this process and keep track of it. So this first example is a futures trader. We've actually got 2 futures traders. And so here's some, this is real data. This is they've collected. So not exiting on a stop. It happened once, cost 6R. Okay, so some of these errors that you're going to see, 3R, is that good or bad? You look at the data. Okay, so it cost him that time 6R. Exiting on emotion. Anybody ever gotten a little scared or a little excited and gotten out of something before the rules said? Yeah. So it happened 4 times, cost 29.5R. Stop set too tight.
So this is a good one for you, Kim, because you get out early, you had a 10R winner, you got a half R. That's a 9.5R mistake.
Yes, you're absolutely right about that.
Okay. Stop set too tight. 3 times for 7.5R. Emotional entry, 3 times, 3.5R. So 46R, 11 mistakes. So average mistake here costs 4.23R. Okay? Yes.
Could you talk about a little bit about stops that are too tight? Because I have a problem, which is that I look at an entry. Now, I've been much more, this is a non-system, this was more discretionary, but I look at something and identify what I think is support. Say, okay, well, here it is, and this is, I'll put a 3R stop on this, and I'll put it in, and then it turns out like the stop gets kissed, or maybe a little bit more, and then actually I'm kind of right later, but I've been stopped out for a 1R loss instead of an XR gain.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't understand, like I'm fighting with like how tight is too tight.
Well, that's something you have to set up in your system, and you've got to do some research to be able to tell where that is, and then you might think about re-entry rule as well, because if it does get tight, we'll maybe have it. In this case, he had specific rules about where to set the stop, and then said, no, I'm going to set it a little bit tighter, because I don't think this one's going all the way anyway, so I can get a bigger position, or I know I'm going to be right about this one because it's not going to go that far.
Well,
He had rules about that.
If you really have a system, you know where to set your stops.
Okay.
And if you overrule that, then it's too tight.
And did he, as a result, then also these stops too tight have positions that were consequently too big?
I don't know, but that could be,
Okay.
yes. Yes. Maybe he wanted a bigger position, so he raised the stop up a little bit.
That's, yeah.
Could be. All right, so 46R at 1% risk cost him about 50% of his account value, or 50% from his gains for that year. Now, it's covered a 9-month period, meaning he averaged 1.2 mistakes per month, and so you can do the math real quick on that, where each one costs about 4. So about 4.5, 5R a month in mistakes. So he was managing, I think, 100 million or so in the account. So that gives you an idea of how much the mistakes cost in this case. Okay. All right. Futures trader number 2, future trader B. So in this case, using the wrong prices, so not using the right prices for either entries or exits, happened 4 times. It's minus 0.7R. Entry errors happened 3 times for minus 0.3R. On average, Kim, these are a little bit smaller, as you can see, per mistake. Bad or wrong orders, 19 times for 4.5R. Position size too big, it happened 2 times for 2.7R. Not updating orders, 8 times, 1.7R. So total cost of mistakes, 10.7R. So about 500 trades for this trader over a 2.5-month period. So that means about 1 mistake every other day or so, on average. So position sizing were most costly, on average about a 0.7 R. And if you look at the number of mistakes, it's about a 92% efficiency, which seems pretty good, not too bad, but it costs $35,000 on a $1 million account. Annualized, that adds up to about 17%.
That wasn't the one I was thinking.
Oh, okay. All right. So for the Super Trader program, Van has the Super Traders, before they can graduate, get 95% or better. So 92% is not bad, but then you look at these numbers like, well, not bad, but could it be improved? ETF position trader. So this is more of a mechanical trader. Had 7 programming errors for about a half hour. Distractions during the trading time, 14 times for 2.9, almost 3 R. So emotional exit 6 times, 4.8 R. So 27 mistakes, 8.21 R. So each one, I should say, the average is about 0.3 R on the mistakes. So he was up 31 R in 2007. Total gain was about 30% for that year. But without the mistakes, he would have been up 39 R for the year. So his mistakes cost him 20% of his profit.
That was the monthly.
This is the monthly rebalancing one, okay? So you say, yeah, well, it's just a couple, 8, 9 R, but well, 20% of your profits, his profits could have been about 20% higher. Adds a little bit of impact to it, right? All right, rookie ETF and swing trader. So execution orders, efficiency of 89%, 1 R each, so a total of 13 R, happened 13 times. Another individual mistake, mental or emotional orders, 94% efficiency on that, 1 R each for about 5 R total. Global errors, global mistakes, lack of position sizing strategy, 12 R. This is me, I'm this guy. And I had traded for a while, and I was using small positions because I was basically proving the trading systems to myself. And I knew from the account standpoint that I was basically break even for the period. But then I started doing my periodic review, and I found out, wait a minute, I don't remember, it was 15 or 20 R in there. It's like, well, what happened? Why if I had 15 or 20 R in the period, why didn't I have at least some profit in the account? Well, what was I doing? I was trading 10 shares just to get the small account, the small trades in. But I was trading 10 shares of everything. Well, what happened? Well, on the 10 shares that were really big, and I might have lost a little money, On the 10 shares was really small and I made a nice profit, well, that didn't show up either because I only had 10 shares. So I had a basic understanding, more than a basic understanding of position sizing strategy, and I wasn't applying it. So a minimal effort, and I could have had 12 R for that particular period there. And then less a stalking process. There are certain systems that have an initial trade that comes on, and then that trade concludes. You exit the position. If you watch the pattern some more, oftentimes there's a re-entry point, and you can get back in. And I didn't have a way that I systematically followed those. And after going back in my periodic review and looking at those, I missed out on 15 R worth of trades right there. So I could have had another, 27 R right there. So total of 45 R in mistakes for this period. So 29 individual mistakes, 46 R total. Average cost of the mistake was minus 1.5 R, and there were about 217 trades in that period. Okay. So again, doing this was really hard because you start noticing where you're making mistakes and where you're lacking, and then some of them you pick up. Anybody make a mistake is like, oh, that was a mistake right then. You know it right then. And then others with the periodic review, those top tasks of trading, you go back in that process, and then you can find some more. So excellent way to keep track of how you're doing on an efficiency basis. RSI day trader. So this guy has a day trading system based on the RSI indicator. He's in and out a couple positions on a daily basis. Staying too long in a position, exiting after the exit signal. So he got the exit signal, but he didn't exit. Happened 13 times. about 0.7 R on average, 10 R total. Entering without a valid entry signal. He doesn't say this here, but I think that was a little bit based on emotion sometimes. Incorrect position size happened one time, very small error, caught it. Incorrect stop set happened once, or a 1 R error. And he had 101 trades over a 3-month period, so 18 mistakes, so 82% overall efficiency. Keep in mind, Van looks for a 95% plus to graduate from the Super Trader program. Total cost of mistakes was 13.5 R, average cost about 0.75. He found this really interesting. Nearly half of the trades were long and half of them were short, but 14 of the 18 mistakes he found on short trades. So he didn't make any conclusions off that or come to any psychological reasoning, but he did notice that, and so that tells him that on short trades he needs to pay more attention to the rules, because he knows that he's got the tendency to make mistakes on those. So, and then he was also surprised by this when he looked back at the mistakes. Most of the mistakes, not exiting, occurred because he wanted to be right. He thought he had dealt with that and didn't care about being right anymore. Well, it turns out he still wanted to be right. So he found that very surprising, and it raises your, when you do this analysis, it raises your level of awareness. Where am I likely to make a mistake? All right. Option spread trader. This was somebody who had a monthly time decay system and was trading it quite actively for a while. So he had no profit-taking stop set. Had 5 mistakes, about half R each for 2 R. He had no process for stalking, or a very weak one for stalking and monitoring. Cost him 16 errors, 0.8 each for 2.7 R total. So emotional entries happened twice, 1.5 R total. Emotional exits 9 times, happened a lot more, 3.7 R cost. Ignored a stop 4 times for almost 6 R there total. Order entry error happened 5 times, very small ones, 0.2 R each, 0.8 R total. So totally had 41 errors, on average 0.4 R, and then 16.5 for the total mistake, cost of mistakes. Okay. The biggest thing he found out, though, was he kept trading this particular system. The market type had changed. I think it was at a top and it started rolling, but he kept trading it. And he knew that he shouldn't keep trading it once the market type changed. The market conditions were changing. The reason the system worked wasn't going to work anymore, but he kept trading it, realized this after the fact, and so that cost him another 15 R. So he had 83 trades over about a 4-month period. Actual expectancy, what he actually got out of the system was a minus 0.19, so slightly less than break even for the 83 trades, but his mistakes turned a profitable system into basically zero expectancy. So he would have made money had he followed all his rules as he was supposed to. And he did this research after he had traded this and stopped trading it. So it wasn't a matter of being in the trades and trying to keep track of it. He went back, but he was really surprised because it was a frustrating period that he had traded this through, and come to find out he could have done all right. All right, preventing mistakes. There are 3 critical tasks from the top tasks of trading. Remember what they are? So self-analysis in the morning, mental rehearsal in the morning, and daily debriefing at the end of the day. How does self-analysis help you prevent mistakes? Takes a look at where you are that day. Why does that matter, Gracia?
Well, because if I'm feeling really bad that day, I'm much more likely to make a mistake.
That's right. So if you're feeling really bad, if you're in a mental state where maybe you should not be trading, anybody been in a bad mood and done something stupid or not paid attention? Yes? Okay, that happens. You have the choice as an individual trader to trade or not trade that day. So in the morning, if you do your self-analysis, you're looking inside, how am I feeling today? Am I in a mental state ready to trade and trade well? Then trade. If you're not, you say, okay, then I'm not going to cause myself mistakes by trying to trade today. So bank traders don't have that option. If they have a horrible night, or they're feeling that bad, or something's going on in their lives and they come in, they're expected to trade.
It's not their money anyway.
It's not their money anyway. All right. Mental rehearsal. How does mental rehearsal help you avoid mistakes?
Question because you're mentally practicing what it is you're going to do, and you can then once it comes time to do it, it's a more of an autonomic reflex.
Yes, yes. One of the things that you can do, one of the things you can rehearse is, what's the last mistake I made? How would I do that? How would I handle that situation again? And you mentally rehearse acting in the proper manner, following your rules, and then by the time that comes up later that day or sometime at some point in the future, you've already rehearsed it mentally inside. Okay. And then daily debriefing. How does that help you prevent or identify mistakes?
Put structure around the process so that you can identify things that you would have just overlooked had you not dug into it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So you're looking back at the day. What did I do? Did I follow my rules? And Van says this, if you followed your rules, pat yourself on your back once. If you followed your rules and you lost money, pat yourself on the back twice, right? Because you followed your rules. It's not about making money. It's about following your rules. You're having a set of rules that makes you money. But it's taking a few minutes to specifically look back at the day and identify, did I follow my rules? Did I make any mistakes? Because if you don't do that, then what's likely to happen? Did I make any mistakes last week? No, probably not. I'm good. Okay. Determine what caused that error, and you can build in actions to avoid it in the future, but you can also mentally rehearse it. So you go back to the next morning, or even in that moment, but mentally rehearse what happened and what would have been the proper thing to do, what would have been how to follow the rules properly in that case. Okay. So go ahead, if you've kept track of your trading in the past, you can go back and look through there and see what kind of mistakes you made. We applied some of those values that we had earlier in the presentation on global mistakes and individual mistakes. You can apply those if you find mistakes. You can also keep track of them real time. So once you're aware of mistakes and what they are in the daily periodic review process, you can start tracking them on a daily basis. But if you'd like, you can send that to Van. We do keep track of this. We have these other ones that were listed there from other people who have sent data in. And we'll keep you updated on additional advances in the area of mistakes as we go forward.